Hello friends, welcome back to Lomedics. In this video, I am going to explain about menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle is the cyclical change occurs from one menstruation to another menstruation. That is menstrual cycle. What is menstruation? Menstruation is the periodical discharge of blood and waste from the female genital tract. That is menstruation. Menstrual means monthly cycle. That is menstrual cycle. The average menstrual cycle takes place about 28 days and the normal menstrual blood does not clot the phases of menstrual cycle. It has two phases based on the changes in the ovary. It has follicular phase and luteal phase. First, the follicular formation is start and the corpus luteum formation take place. That's why it is called follicular phase and luteum, corpus luteum, that is luteal phase. And based on the changes take place in the uterus, it is called uterine phase. They are menstrual phase. First, the menstruation starts, that's why it is menstrual phase, and the endometrium start proliferating, so it is called proliferative phase, and the proliferated endometrium produces a secretion, so it is called secretory phase. Again, the uterine cycle phases, they are menstrual phase, proliferative phase, after ovulation, the secretory phase. Ovarian cycle phases are follicular phase, it is start on the first day of menstruation, and the ovulation takes place at 14th day. After ovulation, the luteal phase. Menstrual cycle hormones. The major hormones are gonadotropin releasing hormone. It helps to release the gonadotropin hormone. The gonadotropin hormones are FSH, that is follicular stimulating hormone, LH. These two hormones are called gonadotropin hormone. These two hormones are released due to the production of gonadotropin releasing hormone. The follicular stimulating hormone regulates the growth of follicles and the luteal hormone that regulates the ovulation. Estrogen that regulates the endometrial growth and it regulates the follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, and progesterone it regulates the endometrial growth. Now the menstrual cycle. Hypothalamus that releases the gonadotropin releasing hormone that act on pituitary gland, that anterior pituitary gland release the follicular stimulating hormone as well as the luteinizing hormone. These hormones act on the ovary and the follicular stimulating hormone regulate the growth of the follicle. So the primordial follicle converted into primary follicle, and then the primary follicle is converted into secondary follicle. It is the matured follicle. The follicular stimulating hormone that stimulates the growth of about 15 to 20 eggs in the ovaries. But as the follicular phase progresses, one follicle in the ovary becomes dominant and it suppresses the growth of other follicles in the ovary. The secondary follicle has theca cells and granulosa cells. These theca cells attached with luteinizing hormone produces androstenedione. Granulosa cells attached with follicular stimulating hormone and produces aromatase enzyme. The aromatase enzyme converts the androstenedione into 17-beta estradiol, that is estrogen. Luteinizing hormone released from the hypothalamus attached with the theca cells that produce androstenedione. That androstenedione converted into estradiol by aromatase enzyme. Now the estrogen level is increased. If the estrogen level is increased, the luteinizing hormone level also increased, but follicular stimulating hormone level is decreased. It is negative feedback mechanism. This luteinizing hormone is positive feedback mechanism. Regulate the endometrial thickening and the glands produce a thick mucus. That is proliferative phase. Proliferative phase starts at the end of the menstrual phase and the duration of proliferative phase is 10 days. At beginning of the proliferative phase, the endometrium is desquamated. Later, the endometrium starts healing and proliferate after 6 to 14th day. Then the endometrial thickness is 3 to 5 mm. The proliferation occurs under the influence of estrogen hormone. The dominant follicle releases the estrogen, so the estrogen level is increased. Then the FSH level is decreased, so the follicular growth is reduced. And LH level is increased, it starts the LH surge. LH surge is the release of ovum from the dominant follicle. Now the ovum is released from the ovary, that is ovulation. Many women experience the release of increased egg white color cervical mucus from 1 to 5 days prior to the ovulation. It indicates the fertilization period. Ovulatory phase is the midpoint of the menstrual cycle. Now the secretory phase is start from ovulation and extend up to the next menstruation. The duration is 14 days from the end of ovulation. Then the endometrial thickness is 6 mm. The released ovum is captured by fimbriae and it travels through the fallopian tube. And it waits in the fallopian tube for 24 hours for the fertilization. If the egg is fertilized, the fertilized egg is moved to the uterus and implanted in the lining of the uterine. Then it converted into the baby, fetus. Okay, the ovum is released from the dominant follicle. What happened to the outer layer? Empty follicle that develop into a new structure, that is corpus luteum. This is the corpus luteum formation. The corpus luteum secretes the progesterone and estrogen. It prepares the uterus for the pregnancy. If there is no fertilization, the corpus luteum regresses and reduces the production of progesterone and estrogen level. The endometrial proliferation is stopped and the glands filled with the secretions. So it produces a secretion and the spiral artery become more coiled and dilated. It is the luteal phase. Takes place by the luteal corpus luteum, right? So it is called luteal phase. There is more secretion in the endometrium. That's why it is also called as secretory phase. During menstrual cycle, sudden drop of hormone levels. Progesterone and estrogen hormone levels are reduced due to the regression of the corpus luteum, and the LH and FSH levels are reduced after ovulation. So the endometrium shrinkage is start. The blood supply is stopped to the endometrium. So it leads to focal necrosis of the endometrium. The necrosed endometrium is start shedding along with the blood and other secretions. That is menstruation. Menstrual phase. The next menstrual cycle begins. Hormones level. During proliferative phase, FSH hormone regulates the follicular growth and the Graafian follicle produces the estrogen. At the end of the proliferative phase, LH production is increased, LH surge is start and it leads to ovulation. During secretory phase, corpus luteum releases the estrogen and progesterone. Look at here, this is a menstrual cycle. At the starting of the menstrual cycle, the hormone levels are reduced. Then the pituitary gland releases the follicle-stimulating hormone that regulates the follicular growth, and the dominant follicle releases the estrogen that act on pituitary gland and increase the luteinizing hormone level, and the LH surge is take place. So the dominant follicle releases the ovum. If fertilization is take place, the fertilized egg implanted in the uterus and the corpus luteum releases the progesterone, and the progesterone prepare the uterus for the pregnancy. If there is no fertilization, the corpus luteum regresses and converted into corpus albicans and next menstruation starts. That's all about menstrual cycle. Thanks for watching.